Good afternoon. This is the truth. I'm nervous. And I speak and facilitate in front of people all the time. But I still have inner critics and self-doubt. How many of you resonate or have heard these sort of messages that I did before? Show of hands. Okay, we're in good company. We're in great company. Can you start that for me? So what I do is leadership and team development, typically in tech companies. And what's fantastic is, thank you. Can you also start the timer for me? Thank you. What's fantastic about doing leadership and team development is over time, what I learned was everybody has these inner critic feelings. Everybody experiences either imposter syndrome, perfectionist. Any perfectionists in the room? Hello. Any comparers? People who have an inner critic that compare themselves that they're not as good as Gabriella Schuster. Right. This is something we feel. And what was interesting to me is I never planned to write a book. In fact, I'll tell you the truth, I hate writing. What happened was I had my own inner critics, and then as I was out facilitating, working with teams, coaching people, whenever I would talk to them about what really matters, what came up? Fears and doubts, fears and doubts, fears and doubts. And so the first time I'm just gonna go a little sideways off script for me. I didn't know this topic really that well, but what I did was in October of 2009, I spoke at the Microsoft Women's Conference. I put in 7 proposals that year. I just wanted them to pick me. That's it. They chose one, managing the inner critic in committee. Somebody said afterwards, you should write a book about this. And I was like, no way. It's interesting how my story there's a lot to it. And one of the first reactions I had to that was, I'm not a writer. That would be a total fake, because I'm not a writer. I do leadership and team development. Well, obviously, something changed about that. And now I'm here again. I'm going to speak in the same room, in McKinley, that I did that first session in. I bet you guys can look back in your journey and find these connected pieces, right? I was terrified. Did I know it was going to turn into a book and part of my success story? No idea. But it does. So let's try this. There are white index cards on your table. Grab one. Any piece of paper will work, but there should be some index cards out there. No pens. I bet lots of people have pens, and we can share. How many sharers are out there? We're women. Okay. So we'll share the pen. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do, because I want this to be interactive. On that index card, now make sure you pay attention to this. Do I have everybody? Yes. On that index card, I want you to write down the most recent inner critic message you heard in your head. Might have been 5 minutes ago, might have been 5 days ago. What was the most recent inner critic or imposter syndrome message you told yourself? For example, if this were me, it would have been, there's no way I'm as good a speaker as Gabriella. I'm not a real speaker. I don't do that for a living. So write that down on your card. If there was more than one message, you can feel free to write 2. But get that one written down. I'm not going to give you very long, so pen to paper. When you're finished writing that down, just raise the card above so I can just see. Pretty close. Write faster. Write faster. Okay, you can put them down. Wonderful. Okay. Now, here's what I want you to do. You're going to share these cards with your table mates. Don't let this impact your speaker feedback. So pass them around the table, read each person's card. No need to chat a lot. Just read every card and pass them to the person on your right. I'm going to give you a minute or two to pass them to the person on your right. What? Yeah, you're rotating. Read it, pass it to the right. Read, pass to the right. Read, pass to the right. Karen. Oop. Okay. How many of you, show of hands again, were horrified when I told you you were going to read the cards, or had some experience of panic and uncertainty? Yeah. Now, I've done this in workshops for years, and when we debrief it in smaller sessions, I hear the same thing every time. At the beginning, a fear response, a reactive fear response from our emotions. Lots of thinking goes on. As people read the index card, and by the way, I make people stand up and mix in 30-person sessions. You only had to read your table once. Lucky you. What we often hear, or what we always hear, is, how did you feel after you started reading them? The response is, wow, I thought it was just me. I feel less alone. They also say, I'm sitting with this amazing women. I had no idea. I think they're fantastic. I'm the only one that's a complete fake at the table. It's not true. It's not true. Imposter syndrome and inner critics are a human experience. Every person has them. Now, I always get asked this one question, so I'll say it right now. Do men have inner critics? Yes, they do. Men are not socially allowed to talk about them at table groups. Women do. Men talk about them most often in individual coaching sessions, and a lot of stories in the book are men. So everybody has this experience of imposter syndrome and inner critics. So that's one of the first things to tell people, is to realize you're not alone. And what we find is that when you talk about it, it starts to take down the intensity and toxicity of it. When you realize, if I can sit at a table and share that, it takes the toxicity down. And here we are, we're building community. There's nothing wrong with, and women can do it more socially acceptably than men, of saying, here's where I'm afraid. And people will be like, me too. That's what community is. That's part of what community can be. So keep thinking of this, because as I tell these stories, these are the tools. These and 42 other activities in the book. I'm nothing if not an overachiever and a perfectionist. So keep these in mind. Keep looking at this card. One of the other things that tends to happen, and I learned this in graduate school. We were going through a training class, And we had to put together a 2-hour facilitated training. We could do anything. The topic was diversity. Yes, I love that topic. I made this gorgeous PowerPoint. I wrote it, I rewrote it, I had handouts, I had a game. Phenomenal. I delivered it. It was okay. Now, I'm a perfectionist. What does okay mean? Failure. I mean, I was rocked. I was devastated. And my professor came up to me and she's like, Stace, you did fine. You got a passing grade. And I was like, I know I got a passing grade. I know I'm at this conference. I know I just did an accelerator. I know I just did a startup, but it's failure. Anybody? What she kept asking me, and this is a tool as well, is, okay, why does it matter that you did so well at this? Well, because diversity is a really important topic. Why does that matter? Well, it's just, diversity is out there. It's a business case. She's like, no. Why does it matter to you? And I thought about it for a second, and I realized at the heart space, it mattered to me because one of my core values is belonging. There have been times in my life when I sat at a table or I was in an office with all men or anything, and I didn't feel like I belonged. And I want everybody to feel like they belong. And she said, yes, exactly. That is your divine flaw. Tragic flaw in literature is something that leads to the downfall of the character. She said, divine flaw is this. The flaw in you is you're a perfectionist. Sometimes you overwork things. Try too hard. You're too hard on yourself. The divine side of this, the relationship it has, is that it's because there's a divine piece of you who cares about people and who wants them to feel like they belong. That is what you have to remember when the flaw starts to come up. And I was like, yeah, okay. But I really want to get rid of this perfectionist thing too, right? Here I am. Okay, what can I achieve next? You just told me how I was divine, but really I just want to focus on fixing myself. She said, great. You can fix this perfectionism. You can stop being worried about doing it exactly right. Here's the trade. You have to give up worrying so much about people feeling like they belong. No dice. No deal. I can't make the deal. So in the book and in coaching, what I tell people is, think about that inner critic message. Look at what you wrote down. Is there something in that inner critic message related to one of your core values? Related to something you care about that really matters to you? Ask yourself, why is that message important? And see if you can find the thing in you that drives that. It's not always there, but most of the time it's there. How can you relate something you value, something you care so deeply about, to these critic messages? And what that does is that helps me. For me, this is one of my biggest tools, the divine flaw. I start to, when I feel it, and I'm still going to feel it. By the way, I hate to give the ending away. The inner critic doesn't go away. The imposter syndrome doesn't go away. I wrote a book. I still feel it. But what it does is it doesn't paralyze me. I remember why it's important. And I channel my energy there. And then on this side, it loosens up a little bit. It loosens up for me to go up anyway, for me to take the stage. And here's the deal. You guys are already doing it. How many of you feel imposter syndrome or inner critic? Let's do a show of hands again. Great. How many of you are doing something important? Going after success. You're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, you're an accelerator. How many of you are doing that? You're doing it already. If there was any magic trick I can give away, it's that imposter syndrome and inner critic don't necessarily go away. And for God's sakes, don't wait for it to go away before you have your voice. Just go out there and take action. Figure out what you care about. That's the secret. I was actually, they have a makeup artist for the speakers. It was awesome. I was talking to her, and she was asking, so I basically gave her the short session. And I said, really, the secret is we feel it, we operate anyway. We go ahead and do it. You have the stamina, you have the expertise. You guys are innovators. You're in a disruptive industry. We're in a disruptive time for women, right? We're doing things that have never been done before. You are. I might be too. So if that's the case, if you're on the edge, if you're doing stuff that's new, if you're at the edge of business, guess what? There are no pros out there, so imposter syndrome is impossible. You're already doing it. There are other things you can use to manage that sensation. I'm going to skip this. I'm just going to go through this really quickly. The second half of the book is about your success side, and I think this is the best set of tools to combat inner critic or imposter syndrome. Know your core values. Another one is know your stories. Where have you been successful? What makes you proud? Write them down. Our core muscles in our body, how many of you do core muscle activity? Don't feel embarrassed if you don't. I don't either. I used to be able to do a star plank. I can't do it now. But we do them because this core is lazy. It will not get stronger without exercises. Your confidence, your inner success, your strength will not get stronger without more inner confidence and intentional activities and work. Sit down, write out your success stories, write out your prouds, track your wins, share them with somebody else. It's not bragging. Figure out what your strengths are. These exercises are in the book. You don't even need the book. There's worksheets on the website. You know how to do this. You don't need worksheets. You don't need a book. You know how to do this. And I know all of you have it. But that doesn't mean you don't feel it. It doesn't mean I wasn't shaking 15 minutes ago. So get clear on what those critics are. Know when they're going to show up. Find some particular method. Figure out what your values are and your divine flaw. Rechannel the energy. Start working on your success stories. Write out your strengths. In fact, I want you to do that right now. Flip that card over. I want you to write down one of your amazing strengths. In fact, write 2, 3, or 4 of them. Write down one of your amazing strengths. By the way, for perfectionists, that doesn't mean you use that strength perfectly 100% of the time. It means you're really good at it. Now I want you to turn to the person next to you with your card and say, I am great at, and read it. I'm uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to call you back up here really quick. Attention, back up here just for a sec. So here's the deal. I've got a challenge for you. We're going to do 2 things. We're going to end this session on a bang. And then as you go out the rest of the day and meet people, that's what you're supposed to do here. Talk about what you're great at. Share a success story. I challenge you. I challenge you to go up and share a success story or a strength with another woman. We need to hear it. We need to hear it from each other. It emboldens us to be even better. So stand up. Last thing, everybody stand up. It's afternoon. Your energy might be waning. On 3, I'm going to ask you to shout out your strength as loud as you possibly can. Are you ready? Yes. 1, 2, 3, shout. Yes. Fantastic. Thank you.